Pay close attention. The news you're about to see is fulfilling Bible prophecy.
Welcome to another edition of YPN News, bringing you news as it relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Yeshua Hawkins. Well, Jeff, apparently AI is taking over, seems like everything, including music. And a lot of people are kind of surprised that when they do hear not just songs, but songs that are topping the charts, never have been touched by a human voice. Wow. Yeah, we've got that in the news tonight. Also, Iran is suffering with a little bit of a water shortage, so bad so that their president is even talking about possibly even having to evacuate Tehran and some of the other areas. Russia is also sending drones into certain areas and to European countries. And we're also going to talk a little bit about America and its presence in Latin waters. And that's making a big statement. Of course, you know, it's President Trump's war on drugs in Maduro, Venezuela. That's a part of the target down there. But first, start us off, AI. Well, it's been a buzzword in the tech and non-tech communities lately. Well, technology is used in everything from coding to video production and editing, and also music. Well, it's not unusual for new songs to top Billboard charts because, well, songs do so all the time. Well, the latest 3 to top charts, including the streaming service Spotify, didn't even have an artist who sang them. They were all completely AI generated. Well, the groups and songs were created and edited using AI. The songs went so viral that one of the artists, the AI generated artist, entire catalog just completely disappeared from Spotify. Well, now, Spotify says it didn't remove the content, and the owner said he doesn't know where it went.
Well, in a survey of 9,000 people who listened to human-made and AI-made tracks, 97% of the participants couldn't tell the difference. Even professional musicians had a hard time telling the difference. Now, on one music platform, over 50,000 AI-generated songs are uploaded every day, which equals 34% of the total music uploads. Now, that number only represents the total of what AI detection software is able to catch, meaning the actual number, Katan, is probably much higher.
Yeah, and a lot of the actual artists, they're not real pleased with this because it kind of feels like they're going to get phased out, you know, because you can just use an AI program to do what, you know, a lot of them have honed in that craft for many, many years.
Yep, you don't have to have talent anymore, just do it on the computer.
That's right. Well, music isn't the only thing that AI has infiltrated. Now people are going to AI for therapy. And mental health experts are warning people that artificial intelligence is not a substitute for actual human therapists. Take a look at this next video for more.
And speaking of all the debates of all the ways that AI is set to give us a hand, what about using AI as your therapist? Well, today, the American Psychology Association is out with this new advisory about using AI chatbots for therapy, warning that they cannot substitute care from a qualified human professional, even as there is this shortage of behavioral therapists nationwide, and chatbots seem more than willing to dole out advice on mental health. Let's bring in Dr. Judy Ho, a clinical forensic neuropsychologist and author of the new Rules of Attachment. Great to see you, doctor. Okay, so for a lot of people, I got to be honest, like it is notoriously hard to get into therapy, and yet AI chatbots are in all of our pockets. Have you seen a lot of people just starting to turn to AI for help working through issues?
Oh, absolutely, Gotti. This is such a timely topic because we are talking about this so much as a field. And as you can see, APA just put out this advisory. They're literally trying to catch up to user behavior. because we are seeing people across the board talking to AI as if it's their buddy. And it's so easy. AI even has a friendly voice function where you can talk to them just like you're chatting with them while you're driving in the car. So instead of people listening to podcasts, people are chatting with their AIs in the car as they're driving, as they're in their commute, and they ask AI all kinds of questions. But of course, as you just mentioned, it comes with a lot of trepidation too, because there's this recent lawsuit against ChatGPT because it appeared that AI advised a person on how to take their life.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm so glad you brought that up. One of the big criticisms of chatbots has been this like sycophantic super deference, sometimes like your best friend, sometimes even flirty. And when you're asking a chatbot to give you advice on a question, they kind of make you feel like you're the center of the universe, right? Like what kind of potential harms come with that type of approach to a human being when they're trying to work through issues and trying to figure out like what is real and what is in their head?
It's such a good point because, Gotti, when I ask questions of ChatGPT, it'll tell me that my questions are brilliant or this is perfectly laid out. Who doesn't want to hear that to some extent? But actually, I've had to give feedback to ChatGPT like, okay, now none of your compliments mean anything because you always say all my questions are so great. And really, it's just a basic question, right? So there's definitely some psychological impact it's going to be having if it's just telling you that everything is wonderful, everything is great, when maybe that's not really the case. And then you're interacting with people in real life and they're saying, this wasn't a brilliant question. This is a basic question. You know, that's a big disconnect, right? And that's a cognitive dissonance that you're going to have to wrestle with. But also, I think that when people feel lonely, it can feel a lot more low lift to go to a chatbot rather than to actually interact in real life, because there's some real risks with that. They could reject you. They can say something that you don't like to hear. And sometimes people just want a yes person. And at times, chatbots can be like that.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many implications here. Like there's the cost factor. There's the fact that, you know, you go to a therapist, there's a long downloading process. And if you're talking to your chatbot all the time, they already know all that stuff. And yet what you said, it rings so very true. It does feel like, I mean, we've seen the use of AI excessively can lead to some problems, and using it for things like intimate problems or social attachment. In some ways, this seems like holding an AA meeting in a bar, right?
Right, exactly. And there has been more of an addictive process that's at play in terms of how people are becoming more and more reliant on AI. Obviously, it's not the same exact thing as alcohol or substance addiction, but we're talking about more process addictions, like when people become addicted to gambling, addicted to gaming or internet use. There's a slippery slope there where you become overly reliant for all of your coping needs, and you're using it to distract yourself and escape your problems. And it's actually causing more distress, causing dysfunctions in your relationships, causing you not to be able to meet your responsibilities. And despite this being a new and emerging technology, we are already seeing those types of behaviors in some users, which means that it's raising the risk of mental health concerns among a population that might already be vulnerable to mental health symptoms.
Gatan, that is a scary thing, to let a computer actually give you therapy or give you advice regarding your life situation there, you know, especially because they just can pull information from anywhere and there's no telling what that therapy or that advice is really going to do to that person.
Yeah, unlike a real therapist who can actually, you know, tell, you know, tone of voice and you know, facial cues and things like that to kind of read a little bit more into what the person is saying. A computer just can't do that.
Nope. Well, Iran is suffering its worst drought in recorded history, and the president is warning that people might have to evacuate. Now, Tehran, which has a population of over 10 million people, could fail to meet the demand for water within the next 3 weeks. So no city has reached that point, but several have come close, including Cape Town in South Africa, which came close to hitting day zero of its water crisis back in 2018.
Oh, scary. But as we move forward, of course, the climate hasn't gotten any better. Temperatures have been on the rise and normal rainfall amounts have been on the steady decline. As a result, increased water shortages have threatened food security and have made it to where people have had to flee, their homes. Well, the question is, will Tehran need to be evacuated? And what can actually be done to address the ongoing and growing water crisis?
Well, Tehran is facing the strong possibility that it will become uninhabitable if it runs out of water. Now, Iran's president since July 2024, Masoud Pezeshkian, announced to the public that water rationing is going to begin if they do not receive the rainfall needed soon to refill aquifers in November. Now, he stated, quote, even if we do ration, and it still doesn't rain, the citizens must evacuate Tehran, which, again, population, Katan, 10 million.
Yeah, right. That's not a small number, that's for sure. But evacuating the capital city means mass exodus of 10 million people. And what has created such an epic catastrophe? Many point the finger to officials, saying water shortages are due to mismanagement. But this has been compounded by climate change, of course. Well, the past summer saw record-breaking temperatures, leaving rivers and dams dried up. If there is no water, it disrupts the ability to grow crops and meet basic everyday health needs, which often results in conflicts.
Well, but water shortages are not limited to Iran. According to the United Nations, they are predicting approximately 700 million people will be forced to move from their homes, cities, and even countries by 2030 solely because of a lack of water. Now, already there are millions who are caught in the middle of conflicts over water. And water, Katan, it's one of those things you always think you're going to have, but, we kind of don't realize, hey, it might run out.
Yeah, and it's an essential part of life. You can't do it without. You can do without food for a bit of time. You can do without a lot of the other somewhat necessities, but water is something you have to have. Well, Russia has been using drones in the European Union, and there have been increasing the tensions as a result between Russia and the EU. Well, this next video gives more details on the new arms race and the straining relationships. Take a look.
And it was never just about Ukraine. Russia has always aimed to break the West and Europe in particular.
Ukraine's president says that Moscow is testing Europe's red lines. Unidentified drones are being spotted at some of the busiest airports and military sites in the EU. That's as the bloc pours billions of dollars into its defenses. So are Europe and Russia close to a confrontation? And is either side ready for conflict? After nearly 4 years of war between Kiev and Moscow, fighting is heating up on the front lines of eastern Ukraine. But with drones spotted at sensitive sites across the European Union, its leaders have declared that Russia is fighting a hybrid war beyond Ukraine's borders. They say the bloc will protect every centimetre of its territory as member states scale up military spending to heights not seen for decades. And although only Ukraine and Russia are officially at war, the continent has now entered an arms race that's reshaping its economies, rattling governments, and reframing relationships within the European Union. All of this comes as Ukraine is losing territory to Russia, 1 kilometre at a time. So, is war really edging closer to Europe's borders, and is the continent prepared?
Brussels Airport, brought to a standstill for several hours because of drone sightings. Belgian officials said it looked like Russia was to blame, but they couldn't be sure. Drones were also seen near Brussels' nuclear plant and military sites. In October and September, Gothenburg, Munich and Copenhagen Airport also closed for several hours due to drone sightings. And Finland, Moldova, Romania and Estonia's airspace was violated. Russian drones were also shot down in Polish airspace. The Prime Minister, Donald Tusk, described it as the closest the country had been to open conflict since World War II. Moscow denies any involvement, with President Vladimir Putin even joking about it.
Не буду больше ни во Францию, ни в Данию, ни в Копенгаген. Куда еще-то летают на эти самые там?
But European leaders are taking the sightings seriously. French, German and British military equipment and personnel have arrived in Belgium to counter drone attacks. And there's a plan to build a drone wall. That's layers of detection and interception systems that will be part of the Eastern Flank Watch, a joint initiative by NATO and the European Union.
There is a hybrid war going on in Europe right now. It is part of rearming ourselves. I think we have to focus, of course, on the cyber attacks and the risk of sabotage and anti-drone capacities.
Russia says the wall will create divisions.
The construction of walls is always a bad sign, as history shows. What we're seeing is a continued militaristic posture instead of thinking about how to engage in a dialogue to jointly seek security guarantees within that dialogue.
NATO is under pressure, with its biggest contributor, the US, threatening to reduce funding if Europeans don't increase their defence budgets, although many of them have. European countries have also been bolstering their military presence on Europe's border with Russia by sending troops. And the bloc says it will be ready for war by 2030. But critics argue that's not soon enough.
Well, Katana, as you can see, those drones are coming close to very sensitive areas, airports, military installations. So, they are going to want to put up the wall, so to speak, to try to counteract these drones coming into their country. But as the man was saying there, it's only going to do so much. Dialogue would be better, but they're choosing that over dialogue, which is a problem we have in a lot of these situations. People don't talk, they don't try to work it out. They just, you do this, I'm going to do this.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, Iran has a new ICBM that is alleged to be able to reach the United States, along with some other new arms tech. Now, this next video shows the new arms race is real and growing. Take a look.
The clock is ticking, and Tehran just raised the stakes, delivering a devastating strategic challenge to the West. Iran has unveiled a new ICBM that can reportedly reach the United States. The IRGC has also showcased its latest Shahed drones. Here's a report.
Tehran just pulled the trigger on a new arms race. Iran has unveiled an intercontinental ballistic missile with a staggering range of 10,000 kilometers, enough, it claims, to strike the continental United States. Iranian military commanders declared it a strategic deterrent, a message aimed straight at Washington and Tel Aviv.
Well, this isn't really helping Iran's cause because there's been a big to-do about them and their nuclear program. And of course, now they have this new ICBM that can reach the United States, having a 10,000 kilometer range. It's got to have a lot of people feeling very uncomfortable right now.
Right, and as we just talked about our last article with the usage of water, Katan, the construction of these type of weapons, anything with nuclear, it uses a lot of water. So, the people are suffering as they make these military advancements, so to speak, trying to get ahead of their enemy. The people now are running out of water.
Which is probably why some of the citizens there in Iran are saying it's due also to mismanagement. That's right. Well, as we mentioned in our last report, the USS Gerald Ford, the largest U.S. aircraft carrier, has entered Latin American waters. And, well, it isn't alone. It's accompanied by multiple American warships, and the firepower present far exceeds what is needed to stop a few boats smuggling narcotics. So, who is the real target of this show of force?
Well, President Trump has referred to Nicolas Maduro, the Venezuelan president, as a narco-terrorist. But Venezuela's neighbor to the west, Colombia, is also worried about the American president's presence off their shores. And they have reason to be. President Trump made this comment stating, quote, "Colombia is a drug den, and it has been for a long time."
Wow. Well, in an interview by NBC Nightly News reporter Richard Engel, the chief of Colombia's elite counter-narcotics division, he said, quote, "Every day we continue to carry out intelligence, land and air operations to combat the scourge of drug trafficking." Well, he was emphatic that they are doing everything they can to fight drug smugglers.
The governments are not the only ones affected by President Trump's recent moves. Many of the fishermen, and that is how they make their livelihood, but due to the threat off their shores, they do not travel out to sea, where they would normally find enough fish to sustain their businesses and their families. Now, the fishermen are afraid that if they go out too far, they will be targeted by U.S. drones. So they stay close to the shore, which does not allow them to catch enough fish even after spending 6 hours on the water.
So what is going to take place next in Venezuela? Well, President Trump has offered a $50 million reward for the capture of President Nicolas Maduro. The opposition leaders in Venezuela are also planning for Maduro's downfall. Well, let's take a look at CBS Evening News report that gives us more insight into their plans.
In other news, the United States is expanding its largest military presence in the Caribbean in decades. Additional U.S. warships are arriving in the region to support the crackdown on alleged drug trafficking led by Venezuela's dictator. Here's Margaret Brennan.
America has blown up 19 small boats off Venezuela's coast, and now the Navy's largest aircraft carrier is arriving. These Venezuelan military exercises broadcast on state TV suggest the threat felt by its leader, Nicolas Maduro. David Smolansky is one of Venezuela's opposition leaders in exile, an ally of Nobel Peace Prize winner Maria Corina Machado. You're planning for the day after Maduro leaves.
Totally focused on that.
Do you really believe his days are numbered?
I strongly believe that.
Maduro's socialism impoverished the oil-rich country and created 8 million refugees. He clung to power with help from Russia, China, Cuba, and Iran, defying a loss in the general election last year. Indicted in the U.S. on narco-trafficking charges, no one has yet cashed in on that $50 million reward for his capture. President Trump is now weighing whether and how to use the military hardware he's amassed in the region.
And I think it's important the pressure that have been implemented from the U.S.
Are they consulting with you and Maria Corina Machado?
We have a constant and fluent communication with the administration. We are convinced that the transition could happen soon. When the regime falls, it will be the Berlin Wall fall of Latin America.
The Berlin Wall falling in Latin America.
Definitely.
Some lawmakers here on Capitol Hill have questioned the president's authority to take military action beyond the strikes on the drug boats. And John, the president has sent some mixed signals on this because he both campaigned against U.S. engineered regime change, but he's also cut off diplomatic dialogue with Venezuela. So at least this looks like a high pressure campaign to oust Maduro.
Well, Katana, as you can see, it looks like the plans are already laid. Once Nicolas Maduro is out of there, the opposition leader is ready to swoop right in.
That's right.
Well, with all of this trouble brewing in the Caribbean, we have to remember that there is still a lot of work to be done after the war between Israel and Hamas. Now, there's talk of reconstruction in Gaza, but what are the plans that are being worked on? Well, 60 Minutes Overtime's Leslie Stahl asked Special Envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, and Senior Advisor to President Trump, Jared Kushner, how the rebuilding will be funded and who are the players. Take a look at our next video.
Well, part of the plan is the reconstruction, the rebuilding of Gaza. And you're builders, you've been in real estate. As you said, it's extremely complex. Tell us more about the plan and how much it's going to cost, where's the money going to come from, and who's going to award the contracts? 3 questions.
I think it's going to cost a lot of money.
What's a lot of money?
The estimates are in the $50 billion range. It might be a little bit less. It might be a little bit more. I happen to think that that's not a lot of money in that region. You have governments that are going to jump on in, and
so the Middle East countries are going to provide the money.
But you'll see European participation and so forth. I think the beginning of this plan is how to get it going, and that's what me and Jared work on all the time. The money raising we think is the easy part. We think that happens relatively quickly. But it's the master plan, and we're working with a group of people who have been working on master plans for the last 2 years.
So there are plans already.
We have plans already. We have a master plan already. And by the way, and Jared's been pushing this, and we're working together on it. And I think if the world saw the progress so far, they'd be pretty impressed.
Yeah, so basically over the last couple of years, there's been a lot of organizations that have been trying to determine what happens after the war. What's clear right now is we're very much focused on the humanitarian and the deconfliction to make sure that the aid can get to the people. And
Deconfliction, because there's still shooting over there.
So you have to make sure that we're dealing with both sides and sending messages so that you don't let embers become little fires that become forest fires. So we're working on deconfliction, humanitarian aid.
Well, kind of like what we just talked about in the previous articles, it seems like they kind of already have plans in place for this situation, that is the rebuilding of Gaza.
Right, and even when they were asked, what is this going to cost, and they throw out a number like $50 billion, they said, no, that's probably, pretty easy to accomplish. It wasn't like they were worried about it in the least. They said, now there's plenty of governments over there that are willing to pitch in and help this get going.
Interesting. Well, in our final video tonight, TV7's Jonathan Hessen explains how things are going since the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas has been called, and some concerns he sees as well. Let's take a listen.
One of the things that really caught my attention in this context, because the wording, as was stated in the President Trump's 21-point plan, and when you go into the CMCC facilities in Kiryat Gat, where they're preparing the enforcement mechanism for the 21-point plan in Gaza, you see it on the wall, the 21-point plans. And so everybody gets the full picture, right, of what actually is the substance of this important vision, so to speak, since it is a vision rather than concrete guidelines. But if you see really within that context, the full framework, it's not about granting the Palestinian statehood. It's about recognizing their aspiration for statehood, and within that context, pledging to establish a political process that would bring about a resolution, a political resolution to the conflict. So it's worded in a way that was palatable for Israel, since Israel's population is not in a position, especially not after October 7th, and the massacre that was committed by Palestinians against Israelis.
From a territory that was, in fact,
de facto Palestinian
state.
Right. So that is something that needs to be taken into account. But at the same time, it does make that overture towards the Saudis that would allow them, were they to be convinced that this process would go unhindered, that it would actually materialize into a framework of the Abraham Accords in one way or another. But under my impression is that the Saudis are not certain that the war has ended.
The war is not ended.
No, I agree. But they don't believe that this ceasefire will hold. The question is, what needs to be done in order to convince them that irrespective on reality, very much like the Emiratis and the Bahrainis, but particularly the Emiratis, regardless of reality on the ground, the Accords are a Catholic marriage, so to speak, where you don't join whenever it's convenient and then depart whenever it's not.
Well, Katana, the situation between Israel and Hamas, many times it has got close to this point where they say, okay, we can finally have peace. We can all agree on this. Israel can do this. Palestinians or Hamas can do this. But never really get to accomplish anything. It seems like there's always setbacks. Yeah. Israel doesn't like something. Hamas doesn't agree to something, and they never really get anywhere.
And part of the problem with this is you have the leaders, but then you have also all the soldiers. And sometimes you have people that are a little bit, they kind of go outside of their ranks and they'll do something like fire a missile or something. And Israel has always responded overwhelmingly to even like 1 or 2 missile attacks with just barraging a particular area with retaliatory strikes. And as we've seen in the past, of course, it's always the civilians that are suffering as a result. So that increases the anger, the hatred, and of course, once a buildup takes place, then there's another strike by Hamas, and it just goes on and on and on.
Right, and as we heard with Jared Kushner, he kind of said we need to make sure all these little embers are extinguished so they don't turn into a big fire. Once again, that's exactly what you're saying. Somebody goes out of ranks, they do something, and there you go. It's all started again.
Yeah, crazy.
Well, if you'd like to find out more about these stories, contact the House of Yahweh, and when you do, don't forget to request your free copy of the monthly newsletter and the Prophetic Word magazine. Here's how.
To contact the House of Yahweh, you can write them at the House of Yahweh, P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas 79604. You can call them at 1-800-613-9494. You can visit them at any of their websites by going to yahweh.com, YisraelHawkins.com, or Yahweh'sBranch.com. You can also visit our website by going to YPNnews.com. You can email the House of Yahweh at info@yahweh.com. And for all calls outside the United States, please dial the number on your screen. And don't forget the Yisrael Says and Ask Yisrael program that is there to aid you in your study and understanding of the scriptures and the prophecies. You can find those 2 programs online by going to YisraelSays.com and AskYisrael.com.
Well, don't go anywhere. Up next is another classic message from Yisrael Hawkins. From all of us here at YPN News, I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
And I'm Katan Alexander.
Thanks for watching.